4 hours ago, giving us a sense of what's really happening on the ground. Also joining us on this broadcast, we'll have the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem joining us on this broadcast, and my colleague Gur Shibran in a short while from now. But before I go across to my colleagues, I would first like to bring in the Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us on this broadcast on the biggest story tonight. Let me first begin by asking you a question that I'd asked my colleague who's also been reporting. All eyes were on whether at all there is going to be some sort of a ground invasion or a ground incursion that could take place, the mobilization of troops closer to the Gaza border, which we have been witnessing over the last few days. But there appears to be a clear delay. And more importantly, in terms of the support that you expected from the global world, that seems to be dissipating, keeping in mind the recent comment that has been made by Turkey, where they're openly supporting the Hamas. In the current situation, how do you really see this entire proposal of a ground incursion, ground invasion to take place?
Well, first of all, I have to say that the fact that we are waiting and we're planning and we're being tactical and strategic just shows you that what we're going to be doing in Gaza is not a revenge impulsive attack. It's the systematic dismantling of their terrorist infrastructure and the terrorist leadership of Hamas. And so I believe we're acting in a very measured way, in a very smart way, and we're doing it in the right way. And so I'm very, very proud of our defense administration for really doing what's actually right, for minimizing civilian casualties on both sides and also minimizing our own casualties from our own soldiers. So I feel confident that when we go in, it's because we'll be prepared to go in and not because we're running into anything that is in the Hamas playbook that we do. So that's the first thing. In terms of the sympathy of the world, at the beginning, I knew from the very beginning, and I've been doing press since that horrible, horrific Saturday when this all happened, I knew that the sympathy of the world had 4 to 6 days maximum. And unfortunately, I was correct. This is the Hamas, again, the Hamas playbook, the victimhood that they've been lying about and the whole world has been swallowing for the last 20 years. And so I work very hard to make people understand that we have ISIS here in our border and that anything we do is to remove the threat of more civilians, more Israeli civilians being killed brutally in the future, and also more Gazans. You have to understand that most of the deaths in Gaza come from their terrorist infrastructure, come from failed rockets, come from people's houses exploding from the bottom because they've created these underground cities. And so Hamas is no good for the Palestinian people, and it's certainly lethal to our citizens. And the first obligation of any government is to protect its citizens.
Mr. Nahoum, I just want to take another question with you with regards to the recent developments, in particular what we are seeing, responses coming in from Turkey, where the president essentially openly criticizing Israel and supporting Hamas. On the other hand, you have Russia welcoming a delegation of the Hamas as well as Iran. Do you believe that this is going to change the equations, or there could be a considerable pressure on Israel at this point in time with the growing demand from some nations that there perhaps could be a ceasefire or call in for a ceasefire? The aid that is being sent to Gaza, I'm given to understand only 8 trucks have gone in, which is exactly why President Biden is now saying that more sort of assistance should be provided. All that put together, do you believe that there is growing considerable pressure on Israel at this point in time?
The only thing these countries should be doing, if they even want us to consider any type of ceasefire, is to work very hard to get our hostages back. Even then, we're going to be dismantling the terrorist infrastructure. And I think these countries understand that any sovereign countries would not allow, any of their sovereign countries would not allow to have a border with an entity that want the complete destruction of your country. Any one of those countries will do the same. And I believe if they want to be useful, what they should be doing is helping us get our hostages home.
Mr. Nahoum, one final question before I let you go. In terms of what lies ahead, the roadmap perhaps for Israel, do you believe that even if there is a considerable pressure on Israel at this point in time, most would certainly hope that this is not going to be the same, what we witnessed in the 5 wars that you've had with Hamas in the last 15 years. And then perhaps many would also argue that Israel became a little complacent while dealing with the Hamas, thinking that Hamas was actually governing the people of Gaza, but rather they were preparing to attack you. So do you believe that even if there is pressure coming in from the international community, do you believe that Israel should continue with what they had planned? And as your Prime Minister has been saying, that we need to do everything possible to perhaps destroy Hamas, because they are not just a threat to Israel, they are a threat to the community?
Well, I think it's very obvious that there's a much wider conflict going on here, and that is Iran and its proxies against the free world, including your country, of course. And so we're just the first stop on that world global jihad ambition of Iran. Their proxies are Hamas, their proxies are Hezbollah, who is also attacking us from the north. They've destroyed Lebanon, they're in Syria, they're in Afghanistan, and of course you've got Turkey and Qatar, who are their friends. And so we understand, as we have done for a while, that the region is split into two, and therefore eventually the world will be split into two. The countries that want peace and prosperity, and the countries that want radicalism and destruction and to take us back 500 years. And everybody has to decide where they're at in this equation. But nevertheless, people should understand that Israel is really the first line of defense for the rest of the free world.
Well, now, Ms. Nahoum, thank you very much for joining us on this